Hi, guys. Welcome to the first episode of Aligned Minds. My name is Dawn. I am a RTT clinical hypnotherapist. On the first episode, I just kind of wanted to explain my journey, introduce myself, how I got here, and give you guys a little background story on this new podcast. So, first, I want to start with where did I start and begin with my healing journey? I would like to go back to when I was 15. I think that's when things really started to impact me the most and be traumatic. So I was 15, I was raped, and got pregnant by that rape. So I lived in a very small town. It wasn't okay to be pregnant at 15. You were talked about, everybody knew one of those situations, right? So my mom made me give my daughter up for adoption. And that was heartbreaking. That was probably one of the worst things I ever went through to date in my life. Um, that was extremely painful. And that was it. So I was pregnant at 15. I had her at 16 and had to give her up for adoption and sign over my parental rights. Um, and then at 17, I was back to school and, of course, being bullied relentlessly, shamed. Um, if that was my kid, I never would have given them up for adoption. I got a lot of that. I got a lot of shaming on that. And so I was dealing with that. And, of course, being called a whore and all of those wonderful things. So high school was not fun for me. I was really behind on my studies as well, so it was a lot of pressure. So that's when I decided at 17 that I would take a bottle full of pills. So that did not work out either, clearly. So it was just, after I gave my daughter up for adoption, it was like never spoke of again in my family. So it made it very, very hard on me. Like I was 15, had all those hormones going. I did not know how to process any of that. So I finally kind of pull myself out of that. I meet a guy that lives in a totally different town, and I'm like, yes, I like you. That's terrible to say, but that's how it went. And so we get married. I was probably 19. I have a child with him. And we were probably married for a year or two, and then we amicably divorced. Um, so then I meet another gentleman, and little did I know, because I was so naive, I had no idea anything about drugs, nothing. At this point in my life, I was in my 20s and I had never even smoked a joint. So, so I meet this guy and I find out that he is selling drugs. So, I find that out actually much later in our relationship when it's literally too late. So, we get divorced, and then but the drug situation has started, right? So there goes that. And it's like a snowball. Once you start, it just kind of keeps going. So so after so first it started with Oxycontin, and I was taking those. I had endometriosis, which is a very painful disease, and so that was the excuse to taking the Oxycontin. Um, and then after the Oxycontin was no longer abusable, it switched to heroin, and then it just kind of snowballed over the years. So altogether, for about 10 years, I was an addict. And it got really bad over the years. The last 3 or 4 years of the addiction, I was injecting the heroin. And it was all very traumatic, the whole thing with the drug addiction, because you become this person that you are not. You do things that you normally would never even consider. And I'm talking about all the bad things that addicts do. I did that, I sold myself for money. I stole from my family. I stole from my friends. I did all of the bad things that addicts do. And finally, towards the end of the addiction, the last couple of years of the addiction, I was just like, how do I fix this? How do I fix this? I just don't want it anymore. And back then, there wasn't a rehab on every corner like there is now. So it was very difficult back then to get sober. And eventually, uh, funny enough, my drug dealer took me to one of his houses and he was like, get sober. I was like, okay. So I went through the withdrawal. I stayed at this house and went through the withdrawal. And after I got through with the withdrawal, I never looked back. I never looked back. I never wanted it. I never craved it. I never, ever, ever had a problem with it again. And I'm not sure how I did that. To this day, I'm not sure how I did that. But I literally became a new being. So then I decided to turn myself in. I had absconded from probation because, when you're an addict, you pick up charges. So I picked up a felony charge and I had absconded from my probation. So I knew there was a warrant for my arrest, and I knew that I needed to, get that taken care of before I could start getting my life back together and start piecing things together. So I turned myself in. I went and did my time, and I came out, and, it was time for a fresh start. So I'm living and trying to, in my meager little house, and I'm trying to get my shit back together. And I meet once again the person that I had been in a very codependent, toxic relationship with for those 10 years I was in addiction. We were together for almost the entire 10 years. And then towards the end, we separated. He went his way, I went mine. Come to find out, after I got out of jail, he was sober as well. So we're like, okay, well, now that we're both sober, let's give this a shot. And needless to say, I found out very quickly that wasn't going to work. But because of that relationship, I got pregnant. So, of course, he didn't want anything to do with it. That's cool. Fine. See you. Bye. I was fine with it. But I thought, well, I'm going to move back home where I'm close to family and friends since I'm going to do this by myself. So I did move back home. And that's really where I started my healing journey. I got into another, you can't even call it a relationship. It was more of a situationship. But I was in that for a very long time, this guy that didn't want to commit, right? One of those. And I'm thinking, what is wrong with me that I think that is okay? Because even when his behavior was poor, even when he wasn't giving me the commitment that I knew I deserved, I was still letting him come back. That's a problem. So I stopped and I was like, okay, so there's clearly a lot of things I need to heal inside here. And so that's what I did. That's how I started my healing journey. I just started looking within. I started meditating. I started reading. I started listening to spiritual people like Abraham Hicks, which is Esther Hicks. She channels Abraham. I learned a lot from her, law of attraction, things like that. But it was a very long journey, and I worked a lot and worked very hard on healing all those little parts of me that weren't nurtured and loved when they needed to be. And then I was like, well, I want to give back. I want to give back because I don't want anybody to feel the way I felt, like there were no answers. I want to be the person that I wish I could have found when I was in my depths. So I was like, what can I do? What can I do? So I start looking, and I'm like, well, life coaching, that's good. That's good. I love Tony Robbins. I love Mel Robbins. They're like my favorite, but there's gotta be something more. There's something more, than just motivating people. And that's when I came across hypnotherapy. And I thought, I'm going to give this a try, see how well this works. So I started reading up on it. And luckily, I found not just hypnotherapy, but I found Marissa Peer and her modality of hypnotherapy, which is RTT, Rapid Transformational Therapy. And it is phenomenal. It's beautiful. I decided, yes, that's it. That's it. That's what I'm doing. I can get to the root cause of why people do what they do and do it very quickly and then transform them. And these people do not have to sit with their negative emotions over and over and over and day in and day out and not know why they do what they do. I can literally get in through the subconscious, find out where this negative behavior started, interrupt that belief, and then they can move on. They can let it go and they can move on. This is beautiful. So that's how I came across hypnotherapy. And so I decided to go to school for it, and I did. And I am lucky and blessed and grateful that I get to change people's lives. I'm grateful that I get to be there when they're having the biggest transformation they've wanted for years. I'm grateful that I get to be the one to help facilitate that. And I am excited for this podcast because I want everybody to know how powerful your thoughts are, how powerful your mind is, and how much it means to have good self-talk. Your self-talk, your inner dialogue is everything. The world around you is showing you how good your inner talk is. If good things happen to you on a consistent basis, then you're saying good things to yourself. What you put out is what you get back. And I cannot wait to explore that more on this podcast. My clients will be coming in to talk about their transformations. All of them are so different. I may be helping them with the same thing. It may be anxiety over and over again, but it manifests differently for everybody in a different way. And you'll get to see and hear about their beautiful journeys and their transformations and what their limiting beliefs were that were kind of locked in the subconscious and they didn't consciously know what they were doing. So you get to go with me on this journey. I am excited. I am grateful that you're here and happy you're here. And yeah, let's get this started.